Welcome to the Sisters of the Moon podcast, conversations about change with wisdom keepers from around the world, mystics who serve as spiritual midwives to support our global family through this time of chaos, crisis, and initiation. I'm your host, Tanishka the Moon Woman, and we're glad you could join us for insights that penetrate the dark, transforming pain into empowerment. We welcome you, your kin, and your ancestors back to the Moon Lodge, the sacred hub of community where we gather to distill our wisdom. So, I'm so excited to have in the studio two fabulous women. Let me tell you just a little bit about them if you don't already recognize them. First, we have Clare Dubois, founder of Tree Sisters. If you haven't heard of this not-for-profit charitable organization, they've planted 28 million trees. I mean, my God, that is, it gives my brain stretch marks. That's such an incredible achievement in terms of serving the Gaia consciousness. And Claire went on a menopausal sabbatical 3 years ago. And when I heard that, I thought, I have to speak to this woman because I've done the same thing. It's been a 3-year menopausal sabbatical, and there's more of us out there. I know there are. So joining me is Kathy Scott, who crossed my path a year ago and we became instant sisters. She's the founder and creative director of the Trailblazery Moon Medicine and the Hedge School. What that means is she has been guiding leaders and change makers and visionaries on the planet for at least the last 10 years. She's as passionate about decolonization as I am. And I just kept begging her, can we have a public conversation about what we were both navigating, i.e., the intensity of the midlife transit. So, welcome. It's such a delight to have you here. Thank you for being willing to, go public with this conversation. So, the way I always start the show is with an invocation and a lighting of candle, because this is in essence a virtual moon lodge, and a consulting of the oracle. So I'd like to do that. So if I can just invite you to turn the gaze inwards by closing the eyes, and you may like to just attune to your heart, bringing us all into co-resonance, meeting in the one heart of the anima mundi, the world soul. And if you're listening to this, we invite you to do the same, knowing this is when we're at our most powerful in that place of unity consciousness, the unified field. And we ask that this conversation is guided by the omnipotent, benevolent force that animates us all, and that it serves all as a medicine, as a healing conversation. To do that, I would like to welcome in the clan mothers, the celestial grandmothers that preside over all women's mysteries. I'd also like to welcome in our oversouls, so the totality of all that we are, and the women of our lineages who are working with us benevolently at this time, this incredible time of transition between the ages. So we welcome in all that needs to unfold in our time together with grace, and bowing to the eternal wisdom that comes through all of us when we sit in circle. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And let's just light a candle, welcoming in great mystery, the light of truth that is the light of love. Okay. So I did pull a card before we jumped on the call, and the intention was what would serve this conversation and the collective. And I got frog. It's from the Druid deck. I don't know if you can see that on the screen. But of course, frog is cleansing and rebirth. You know, it always reminds me of a newborn's bum when you see the froggy derriere there. Um, but it's about in this deck that the Gaelic pronunciation is Loscan, and frog unites the elements of water and earth, which are the feminine elements. And I thought that was quite timely because my understanding of midlife, if we're looking at it from a cyclic perspective, from a feminine perspective, not a linear, is that this is when we enter the feminine elements of water, of earth, and then water. In other words, as the maiden, we're in air, spring. As the mother, we're in fire, summer. And these air and fire are the masculine elements. They spiral upwards towards Father Sky. But this journey of midlife is a humbling of the ego. It is when we must acknowledge that we are also feminine. And in the autumnal time of midlife, we move into water, a dissolution of all that was, and a time of sensitivity, which is what frog is about, and feeling. And that prepares us for winter, for the crone, for the earth. So I'm just wanting to open that conversation. How have you experienced that at all, if at all? Is that something that resonates for you both? Whoever feels to speak to that.
Kathy, over to you, love. Thank you for
Mm,
that beautiful invocation.
mm.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mila Buikas, Mila Buikas. I just want to say my name in my mother tongue is Misha Coitney Scott. It's important to honor this beautiful language. I've been working with her very intensely, and I think it's not a coincidence that my journey with her is becoming more and more powerful as I'm on the threshold of stepping into this great dissolve, as you described it. And when I think of the frog, and thank you for bringing the frog in, I think I just immediately had an image of trying to find frog spawn as a little one, putting your hands in the jelly and having it in our classroom and following the journey from the frog spawn to the tadpole to the frog and the sounds of the frog. I guess for me, first of all, it's a huge honor to be here with you both. I think, as I said, I've got to know you, Tanishka, for the last year, and you've been on my radar for a very long time as an extraordinary teacher and moon wisdom holder. And then I've been lucky enough to be in circle with Claire to host you into our moon medicine circle and to have been catalyzed by you like big time, both in that circle and then listening to you on a podcast a couple of years ago with Alexandra Pope and going, wow, as you were really entering your menopausal journey and knowing that this is somebody that I want to listen to at this time, knowing I thought really it was coming down the tracks. It's about 3 years ago, right? Maybe 3 years ago. But as I feel into it, I think I've been prepared, being prepared, not preparing, um, over the last 10 years. It's interesting. I find myself, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I'll just kind of move into this for a little while. I've been taken out of life many times through early childhood trauma, death of my mother when I was 20, 21, a very close death only recently. So death has played a big part in my development or metamorphosis. And then also break-ups, breakdowns, breakthroughs, all of those moments. And I've been burnt out quite a few times, burnt out from overworking and overstriving and overachieving and overdoing and overfunctioning. Yeah, the queen of it. And I'm probably with two other queens. We're in a queen trifecta here. Um, but really seriously, in 23, I had a car crash in California, where you are now, Claire. that I walked out of that car. It was definitely a near-death experience. I walked out of it with no apparent scratches or, big injuries, internal bruising. But when I look back on that now, I was already in menopausal symptoms at that time. I had 10 pots on the boil and was frenetically busy trying to meet multiple deadlines. And I got into a car to go for a walk in the canyon to calm down and to try and route and find ground. And I ended up in the bottom of that canyon a few hours later. And I know you've had a car crash as well, Claire. So the last 2 years have really asked me to slow down because I just could not get my groove back. No matter how much I fought and pushed through and powered through. And now what I'm sensing is coming down the track, both internally in my 50-year-old body, is something that I think the car crash has prepared me for or started to prepare me for. And I see the mirror of what's happening on our planet. I'm not still fighting it, but I'm watching as I see what needs to dissolve even more. So I'm sitting right on the edge, but I haven't gone over into it yet. That's exactly, I don't know if I answered your question, but that's where I am right now in this moment. Yeah.
Bless you.
Mm,
Yeah. And I thank you for speaking from your heart.
mm,
Yeah. It's like, yeah, it's nourishing to take that in.
mm.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Claire, is that something that inspires you to speak to at all?
Oh God, I wish female bodies came with an operating manual, and um,
Right.
I wish what had happened to the women on this planet hadn't happened in so many different ways, but one of them being the lineages of mothers who have been so disconnected from themselves, they've no idea how to help their daughters plug in
Mm.
to all that we are because it could be so different. And you know, it isn't. And here we are finding our way. And Alexandra Pope, it was interesting. She was the first woman that gave me, and she's the founder of Red School. She
We've had her on the show.
she was the first woman in my life that helped me realize that there was something good about being female. And it was so shocking when I first met her and I first did a workshop with her and I left the workshop and I had the thought, oh my God, there's something good about being a woman. And then I was just like, oh my God, did I just have that thought? It was like the contrast with the sort of default setting of how I experienced myself and then this, wow, you mean we're encoded with the moon? You mean there's actual like spiritual knowing that is literally hormonally wired into our bodies like what but even back and that was a year before I founded Tree Sisters that I met Alexandra. And we did their first online class. We may help them make it inside of Tree Sisters, and then I was banging on at them about doing a menopausal class, not knowing anything about menopause, but just knowing that it was a really big deal and wanting to call it the greatest initiation.
Mhm.
And they called it the Great Awakener, which it is, but I was still like, it's the greatest initiation. This is before I hit it.
Mm.
Um, and it was really interesting. I mean, my mother, who's not with us anymore, she would always say, my lessons come in the form of car crashes because I've been such a pusher, such
Mm.
a driver, such a forcer, such a like, let's do the warrior routine here. And it's taken me until menopause to understand that I am not my body. And even though I might have a warrior soul, I do not have a warrior body, especially at menopause. And the two things are completely different. And you have to recalibrate who you think you are to match what your body is capable of, which is humbling. And I did it in a big way. So I had a incredibly difficult leaving of Tree Sisters, like incredibly difficult, as awful as it could be. Total broken heart. And and I was already I was heavily, actually, I stopped bleeding the month after I left. I resigned, and then my last bleed was the following month. But I was in despair. I was severely burnt out. My severe burnout had already had me pulling out because I couldn't manage. And it also meant that I didn't have the strength to pull the organization back into integrity anymore. So I was watching it. I was watching it become something that it wasn't. And I didn't have what it took to fight anymore. And I was also in such a dissolution of my sense of self. I'd like gone into just incredible shame and incredible. I mean, it was a shit show. No, excuse my language. And there was this big moment around my resignation. When was I going to send in my resignation? Because I was trying to fight for something, and the fact of my resignation was the thing that was on the table. No, you're not going to have that until you resign, kind of a moment. And it was my best friend who said, Claire, it's Halloween. Go find a coffin. Go and die. Literally, go find a coffin and die. And I was just like, but they've got my email, they've got my everything, they won't give it back. Like I was stuck. And he was just like, look, if you died, it wouldn't matter. You'd just lose everything. Just lose everything. And I remember sitting there and just going, wow, die. Die, just die to it all, die to everything, die to who you've been, die to your public identity, die to all your writings, die to everything that you're about to lose, die to the email list that you've spent 12 years building, die to your, like, just die to the whole friggin' lot. And I was just like, wow, well, I didn't do my menstrual years with any wisdom whatsoever. Maybe this is my gateway into menopause, to have a proper death. Maybe this is what it takes. Maybe I'm so loyal and I'm so stubborn, I simply wouldn't be able to let go unless it was all taken away from me. So I was like, I'm going to go find a coffin. So I handed in my resignation. I lost absolutely everything. And I'm not going to pretend for a minute that I've got over that, because I haven't. It's been shelved. It's too painful still, even though I pride myself on being Miss Deal with Everything. I can't deal with it. Still can't deal with it. But what it did was it allowed me, it was like my own choice to literally say, well, thus far in my life, I've burnt myself out multiple times, and I've never been as low as I am now. I was an absolute fraud in multiple respects inside of Tree Sisters, because Tree Sisters, I mean, the courage and the action side, yeah, I was, oh, look at the deer behind. Hi, aren't you beautiful? Whoa. Um, and but the root of Tree Sisters was coming into balance with the body, listening to the nature of your own body. Look at these deers running around.
Yeah, it's so symbolic. Go on.
Wow, what a jump. Um, yeah, like I couldn't follow my body. I could feel it screaming, but I couldn't follow it. And I had despaired about that through my time at Tree Sisters, because the organization would just go on these stress cycles, and I would do everything in my power to get them out, and I couldn't, because underneath all my patterning was so much trauma, and my survival mechanism was driving over the top of it. And it wasn't until I literally quit, walked away, fell apart, totally fell apart, and then realized that what I thought was trauma work wasn't trauma work, and that basically all I could do now was trauma work, because my knowing was the driver in me was the best that I could do, because it was my default setting was so, conditioned into me as a survival mechanism of just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And even though I thought I was such a great feeler, it was because there was just too much inside me that I couldn't bear to feel. So I was running away from it. And I was hiding. I was just so astonished when I realized that I was actually hiding on the global stage, but I was still hiding, totally hiding from myself. And after that last bleed, which I didn't know was my last bleed, there was just this feeling of, if I am going to create anything in my life from here on in that has any integrity with the teachings of Tree Sisters, any integrity with what I know to be an authentic expression of feminine nature as the part of nature, which was my language in the organization. I had to drop through all the false flaws that I was running from that were suspending me above the true nature of myself, and that I wasn't going to go back to work until I'd achieved that. And that's 3 years ago. And last week I had a set of tests come back that said I was in severe adrenal burnout. 3 years later, and I was minerally imbalanced across the board, deficient across the board. And it was just like, wow. I've been telling people you can dig yourself a big hole and then keep digging. You've no idea how long it takes to dig yourself or to build yourself back out again. Like, no idea how long it takes.
Yeah.
But I'll shut up in a second, but the beauty of it, and it is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It is the best thing that I've ever done for myself ever, is to literally allow for a true death, like a real true death, like to have to reach out to the whole network and say, let me go, like just let me go. And to reach into myself and to just go, no, I'm going to keep going down. I'm going to keep going down. I'm going to keep going down. And 3 years in, I still have not learned how to rest. That's the fact of it. And this has been like, just a monumental journey, like monumental. And what I love about menopause is that it takes away, or it offers up the capacity to go into the places that you've never been able to go because your nervous system has been wired so fast. Menopause, whenever it's like everything opens, that you literally have the opportunity to fall through, and you can hang on to those flaws. You can force yourself to keep going, but the opportunity to just descend through who you're not, to discover who you are, feels like not just the greatest initiation or the greatest awakening, but like the biggest frigging privilege and such massive support from this astonishing feminine ocean of wisdom that resides in us, whether we're aware of it or not. Okay, there we go. Sorry for the length of.
Please don't apologize for sharing so courageously in bearing your shadow publicly. I want to acknowledge that a great leader leads by example, and a tyrant doesn't acknowledge their shadow, especially not publicly. Yeah, they'll scapegoat and blame everybody else, but a great leader will own their shadow. And this is, someone who's really integrated Chiron, understanding that our wound is our greatest teacher. And, from my understanding of the archetypes, is that Chiron and Artemis govern the throat chakra, and that, we're really journeying the upper chakras, particularly the throat in midlife, because it's when our wound comes up. Yeah, even insurance companies, they allow for this because whatever trauma we had in childhood, it manifests in our bodies at midlife. So our healing has to become our priority. And for those of us who have been Athena dominant, okay, she's
It's
the
a polite way of putting it.
yeah, well, she's a great archetype, Athena. She governs the solar plexus. She's all about will. She wants to make a difference, and what collectively the three of us have done for the collective is wonderful, and we do need to acknowledge and celebrate that. But she's a maiden. And at this turning of the wheel, the maiden can't keep driving the bus. We must mature. And so, often there's a swing back. For me, I went back to the stage after 27 years. I was like, didn't know, it surprised me as much as everyone around me. I think everyone was like, oh, the moon woman, what is she having a midlife crisis? She's going back to the stage. bearing all as the archetypal butterfly woman doing her heroine's journey, Even my team were like, "What are you doing?" And then it was like, "Oh, I'm being called to work with men." And my audience was 85% women. Like I just single-handedly destroyed everything that I'd built. But my soul was compounding me to do that. There was no way I could ignore this. And it seems to me that the part of us that hasn't been expressed, the road we didn't take, that's what says, right, now it's time. Okay, if you're going to have a fulfilling earth walk, the part of you that hasn't been given much airtime, they're the parts that now want to, be explored. Because I know now I've been married to my work. I haven't had space for a relationship. And now I'm like, that would be nice, you know. Um, so yeah, thank you for both of you being willing to sort of acknowledge the vulnerability because I think the three of us, people look to us and go, oh, but that inauthenticity where you go, yeah, I'm touting one thing, but behind the scenes, burnout, burnout, burnout. And what came up for me was this is when I have to really deal with my internalized misogyny.
Mm.
And that for me, not going to end patriarchy until we do that. And I did journey my menstrual years consciously. I sat and read tense for 30 years. But it still didn't prepare me for my final 13 moons of menopause. God help me if I hadn't. That when you said it was the ultimate initiation, it was like, and it is. And it is. I mean, there is a reason women are leaving their jobs. It's because that bone woman, she demands a death. And you can't keep doing life as normal. This is the inner realms absolutely eclipsing everything that your persona has built, going, great mystery is here. You will be initiated by this. So, death, 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 death. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, anyway, we all had a big spiel there. Sorry, just had to, that wasn't a question, that was just a dump. Thanks for listening. Let me see what else. I've made notes, I made questions. Let's have a look, dig around here. Um, yeah, it seems that we've all been pushers and doers. I think for myself, there's equal parts. Oh no, that's not where I want to go. Where I want to go is this. The wounded self that's come up for me in the last 3 years
Mm.
is the outsider.
Mm.
So, you know, I'm interested to know how much better acquainted you have become with your wounded self the last few years.
Mhm.
Is that something either of you
Mm.
want to speak to?
Yes, I'm really glad you took that turn, that left turn,
Sure.
because I was starting to move, especially as you were speaking, Claire. I went through kind of a trembling and a crying, and now I feel fierce. So I've kind of gone through the motions with you. Um, So I'm just going to kind of respond to what's come up in the last few minutes. I'm an Aries rising, if we want to go into astrology for a
Wow.
moment. And I really, I didn't know I was Aries rising when I co-founded the Trailblazery with my great friend and colleague Claire Mulvaney. But by the time I stepped in to kind of lead the Trailblazery, I knew I had started to understand astrology and I really identified with the Joan of Arc, Aries rising, holding my sword. And as I've got older, I'm looking at, the other parts of my chart, the shadow aspects, even the word, the trailblazery. At this time of my life, I don't feel like a trailblazer. And what is blazing a trail what we want in the world right now, at the late stage, everything. I think for me, when I mentioned, early childhood, the death of my parents, all of the death, and then the burnouts, and I've been really brought to my knees a couple of times. What I'm seeing in particular now as I enter into this great descent, or this another descent, but what feels like the biggest descent, is simultaneously, because I'm feeling symptoms of extreme anxiety that I manage, and sometimes I can meet it, and other times it just wipes me out late at night and early in the morning. And it's not unfounded because I'm very attuned with what's happening, this late stage everything, this apocalypse that we're living in. But I find myself, when I really sit with her, it's a very young me who asked I drove my parents cracked asking questions. Yeah, but then when you die, then where do you go, and what's going to happen to Rusty, your dog, and what's going to happen to the donkeys, two donkeys in the field out the back, and like continually questioning existential angst at about 4 or 5. So I found a way into meeting the anxiety by really sitting with young aspects of myself. It's not perfect, but it requires me to really show up. And I'm not a biological mother, but I've been really asked to mother in the particularly last couple of years. And then my teenager, the 13-year-old, I now can see that when I had my first bleed, I was like thrown to the wolves. I had no capacity to understand what was going on because my mother wasn't able to give me those set of instructions because her mother didn't give it to her. This was in the 80s in Ireland where we still had Magdalen laundries operating. I'm just after getting a heat through my body as I said that. Mother and baby homes still operating. So when I tune back really acutely to that time, it is like being thrown to the wolves culturally. Um, and I feel sometimes I'm still synthesizing that 13, 14-year-old. And when I was at the peak of that, my mother was at the peak of her menopause. And she died at 58, actually. My mother, yeah. And her name was Annie Power. And she didn't have any, or she didn't get to access. So I feel what I'm really leaning into now is how do I access that power line in my mother line that none of them got to access. It gives me huge grief when I think of the grandmothers, the women in Ireland in that, particularly the 100-year cycle. And so I can see I'm going to speak about the collective. That's another thing that I see I've really done for most of my life is seeing everything through the lens of the collective. And as I reach, and I might be contradicting myself, but as I reach this menopausal threshold, I really want to stay more with the inner me, the little me at various, without being too self-indulgent, but like to actually show up for her. And because there's a thing in Ireland called the cause. My grandfather, my grandmothers and my grandfathers, they all fought for the cause of a free Ireland. That was everything. They were freedom fighters. And it's in my epigenetic memory. And if I'm left to my own devices, I'm working out Ireland's trauma every 5 minutes. Like that's where my brain goes. And so I have to bring it all the way back in. And where I'm really seeing it is I'm trying to write. There's definitely a lot of writing wanting to come through. And I get stumped to write in the I. It's so foreign to me. I want to talk about the collective. And while it is important to talk about Magdalen laundries, but I go there so easily that I lose. And then the Trailblazer comes online and I want to do big projects about all of that and create a free Ireland and have everyone speaking Irish and a united island of Ireland. Like it's all there at my fingertips and I have to keep pulling back. What if I don't have jazz hands and I'm not out? That's another thing my friends and I laugh about. We're like, oh, the jazz hands were out again the other night and I was being really impressive. I was fucking being really impressive, talking shite. But like, I don't want to put myself down either, but like, what if I stopped trying to be impressive for 5 minutes? I was just
Oh,
in the shit with no
mm,
energy, can't meet that deadline. Fuck the deadline. I just want
mm-hmm,
to, yeah.
mm-hmm.
So I don't know if any of this makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
May I jump in and say Adriana
Please jump in
Huffington?
quick.
Yeah, Adriana Huffington wrote a book, and pretty much I think the back cover, what got me to read it, it was saying, when someone stands up to give your epitaph, they don't say that your inbox was always dealt with at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? Like the things that we pressure ourselves to do, it's actually not important. But thank you for speaking about, you know, the I think so many of us come in, we've heeded Gaia's call out beyond through all dimensions to be here at this time. And we have to have mercy for ourselves. It's like we're having a human experience. And, you know, this archetype of the mage or the magus, that is the midlife, aspect, she's the mystic. So this is about alchemy. And whilst in our younger stage we were more activists, yeah, I've got to be doing, yeah,
Mm.
out in the world. Now it's actually, hang on a minute, everything's interconnected in the quantum field. I am the universe, I am a fractal of Gaia. Like, if I commit to my healing, I am healing the world. Whereas, if we're out there trying to save the world, but we're negating and neglecting ourselves, we're not in integrity.
Mm.
So, yeah. What do you want to say to that, Claire?
Oh, it's just such a loud story.
Mm,
It's just so, I mean, the three of us are here like sitting in this. It gives me great comfort actually.
mm,
Um, to know that it's not just me. Of course, it's not just me. It's not just us. There must be so many other women out there just going, "Oh my God, what am I doing and why can't I stop?" And I've become like menopause gave me my no. Like I couldn't say no. Like I prided myself on, okay, I'll do more, I'll do more, I'll do more. Okay, you want me to do this? Yes. Do you want me to like stand on my head and be naked? Okay. Like it was just, I'll show you how completely dependable I am and how, you want me to stand up in front of 45,000 people? Yes, let's discover whether I can do that. And it's like totally not listening for a second to what was going on in my body. And in fact, not just not just not realizing that it was unkind, but that was how I had dealt with my healing for the majority of my life was got a limitation. Oh, great. It's become conscious. I'm going to bulldoze my way through it. I'm going to grow through intense warriorship, whether my nervous system is fried or not. And in fact, if my nervous system feels fried, there's another door to blast down. I mean, and I had no concept that that was not great. I just didn't know. So, Kathy, when you're talking about, the trailblazery, whoop, here I am, whoop. I mean, it's just like, you know, I'm a leader. Like the identity of being a leader is so woven in now. Like I loved as in Tree Sisters being the one that would do it on behalf of everybody else because I had the courage, and they didn't have to, and they knew that I would do it because I knew I would do it. Whatever it took, I would do it. Raise enough money for 23 wages. I'll do it. Don't worry, I'll do it. Everybody knew she's dependable. She'll do it. It's just like, oh my God, the identity, the strength of identity. And now this 3 years of trauma work is easily the hardest thing I've ever done. Easily the hardest thing I've ever done. And it's incredibly humbling. And I'm not through.
mm,
I'm not through. And the adrenal burnout thingy that I just had, it was just like, wow, extraordinary. Okay, I'm seriously. And she was just, yeah, the remedy for this is we put your adrenals to bed for 3 months. And I was like, gosh, I wonder if this time I'm actually going to be able to actually rest. Like, have I transitioned enough to be able to give that to myself yet? Like, am I there yet? And, because it wasn't just 12 years of insane work with Tree Sisters, it was a lifetime of coping over the top of the trauma. And I knew it was bad. I totally knew it was bad. I still have an awful lot of childhood that I have no memories of, but what I had got memories of was horrendous. And then there's my epigenetic trauma. My mother's lifetime made mine look like a fairy tale, and mine was pretty damn horrendous. And so, I go back to what my mother went through in an orphanage for the first 3 years of her life, just being raped incessantly, and then her mother being thrown out of the family and her being on the street. And then, like, you just go back and abandonment, betrayal, being thrown away, being cast out, negligence, depravity, abuse. Like, it's really hardcore. But I hadn't appreciated the degree to which I wasn't in my body. I knew, I knew in some respects how much I wasn't, but I hadn't clocked until actually starting to make my way down the ladder into the shit of it. I hadn't realized the extent of it. And it's been like discovering multiple selves stuck on electric fences, screaming, and periodically getting another self off an electric fence. Like the shock in my system from the level of trauma and the level of violence that I grew up with was so extreme. And those parts of me just frozen in that state. So another way it's felt like is I'm living in a house with so many parts of myself in the walls screaming. And so my nervous system has never known peace and quiet. It's had this like intensity of fear, trauma in the background, like this like white noise, only it's not white. It's horrendous and it's going on all the time. And then there's this level of intensity that I've had to live at in order to match it or drown it out. So I'll do anything, I'll do everything, I'll make it bigger, I'll make it, I will just force and force and force so I don't have to hear the screaming in the walls. And menopause basically said, would you like to discover who you are if you're not simply a reaction to your childhood? Would you like to discover what's there if your life isn't just a coping mechanism over horror? Would you like to discover what it feels like not to have your nerves scraping down a blackboard every second of the day? Would you like to discover, can we show you, like, are you ready? Are you ready for a descent through what you're not? Are you ready to go back down and start finding these parts of yourselves and going through like an intense rehabilitation? Like, are you ready for recovery, or are you going to keep trying to be whatever persona you think it is that is going to validate your existence in the world, because life never validated your existence. And so you carry this wound of such severe self-loathing that is inherited, and this deep argument with life. I mean, for me, it's just been a fight with existence. Like, I don't want to exist. Its existence is just too painful. And so I've been undoing this sort of booby-trapped, back to front, inside out apparency of so big and bright and awesome on the outside and complete absence on the inside, because I'm running around screaming, terrified of who's actually in here. I'm so afraid of myself. And, that's one of the reasons why I created Tree Sisters in the first place, because such a crucial part of the feminine wound is how we have been taught to fear our power, fear ourselves, fear our sensuality, fear our sensitivity, fear everything about ourselves that we've been taught is less than and makes us weak, that is actually the source of our power. And so, I mean, and it's been hell, it's been total hell, but it's also been like, if I don't do this, if I don't take the time, if I don't allow this, one way of looking at it is, I want, as the caterpillar, to dissolve completely. I want total goo. I want total goo of everything that I wasn't, and all the mechanisms that I've used to defend or maintain this false persona. and all the, all the good bits, all the bad bits, everything. I want it all to goo. I can't like prop up this part of myself over here and do goo over there, because then I'm going to become a one-winged butterfly out the other end. It's like I want the full wings.
Yeah.
I want to be able to distinguish when the trailblazer arises within me, that it is conditioning versus a
The
deep,
authentic self.
authentic arising from a connected place that isn't just the same old, same old. And I can't risk. And it's such a yogic squat for me going through this process while the frigging planet, I mean,
Right.
I would never have believed it could get worse from where I was,
Mm.
but now, we've just gone through COP30 and they couldn't even come to any agreement about the forests. Oh no, we'll just help other nations deal with the complete collapse of the world, but we're not going to limit fossil fuels and we're not going to save the forests. The two things that ensure that we're going to, we all know. But
May I
anyway, so
speak to that?
yeah,
I believe that we chose to be on this threshold of power at this precise time. Yeah, because it just, it's like being in a crucible. And when you spoke of, the caterpillar and the butterfly, just like the life cycle with the spawn becoming the frog, transformation. This is a time of being in the liminal space, a time of being between the worlds. In fact, there was a wonderful book called Woman at the Edge of Two Worlds, a workbook that came out in the early 90s about working with perimenopause. And, we are embodying the mystic archetype at this time when I believe it's going to be the mystics that come to the forefront. The irony, those that were burnt, those that were drowned, those that were ostracized, made to be the outsider. It's not the superheroes that are coming to save the world. It's the mystic women that are going to midwife everyone through the collective death and rebirth. If we think about Pisces, the final sign, the sign of death and grief, and, what we're moving into, the transition phase of this rebirth, it's the women that have gone through this shamanic death every month with their menses, then through, maybe the shift from maiden to mother, from mother to mage, that we've practiced death, embodying all that takes to then be able to serve from a really embodied place as midwives for the collective. That's my feeling. But first, our egos are being tempered, and I see that, because we are seeing the rise of the feminine. But in order to rise, first you get taken down. You've got to be in right relationship with power. And so many of us have unconsciously sought power because we didn't believe love was possible, not love for ourselves. So we were striving to prove our worth, unconsciously while striving to make a difference. And it's meeting that unconscious motivation and actually making our peace with it and taking responsibility for that wounded self that does give us our power. It's like if you want true power, you've got to go to what's disempowered. And, for me, the leaders of the new earth, I mean, we're all going to be leading ourselves as sovereigns, leading from our conscience, from our heart. But the new form of leadership are those who are humble, those who are transparent, those who are authentic. So, more than doing an MA at Harvard or whatever, this is the apprenticeship, what we're being put through right now, this decomposition, this, you know, this shitstorm, I don't know.
the
How's
great
that sit
flaying,
for you?
the great flaying. I just want to say one thing to that, which is
Yeah.
there's something about um, going from incoherence to coherence. And the piece, just to what did the original question around what's the shadow or what's the wound that we're coming in touch with, it's like there's something about the incoherence and the fracturing and all the difference of separation that one encounters on the descent, and pressing of love into those places, the pressing of presence into those places, willingness to sit in them without trying to change them so that they can the authentic presence and melt and release and alchemize, and how the wisdom of life is constantly, reflecting us back to ourselves or creating circumstances within which the fracturing becomes conscious so that our presence can be pressed into those places. And it's like this deeply shattered vase that by sitting with it, we're not even trying to fix it, by sitting with it, it naturally it has everything it needs to reconstitute itself. Like we have within us, because the miracle of life, the intelligence of the universe, the just exquisiteness of these vehicles that we're in, all they require is the presence that we didn't get, the love that we didn't get, the attention that we didn't get, the willingness to listen that we didn't get, the validation that they didn't get. All of that comes just from that pure presence place of being able to be with. And then that fractured incoherence naturally starts to become coherent. And that to me is like, that's the integrity out of which our next choices can come from.
Beautiful.
But the menopausal gateway feels like okay, we're now going to give you the support that you need in order to drop into the incoherence by taking away your capacity to avoid it. And for so many people, that's just like, oh my God, it's complete hell. And well, it is if you think having the strength to keep avoiding it is a good thing. But then you're preventing yourself from having the possible opportunity of rebirthing into a self that is actually you, rather than all the defensive survival mechanisms that you created in order to survive a completely confusing world where we arrived, got hammered without operating instructions.
Agreed. And I think this is why there is a medicalization that's hijacking this passage to power, as Leslie Kenton described the menopausal threshold. That rather than actually deal with the trauma, it's like, let's just keep medicating, you know. There was something
Can
I
I
wanted
just
to say.
respond there
Yes,
for a moment
please,
as well?
Kathy.
There's something I'm trying to articulate as I'm listening, which is I think when we need to be mindful about pathologizing everything that's come before this. And I'm really seeing it for you, Claire, because it's a very intelligent response, the trauma response. Sometimes it always is an intelligent response, whatever it is, I went into a lot of addiction for years, which was a very intelligent response because I couldn't bear what was lying underneath it. But I feel like a bolshiness here um, to to also really recognize what came through you for Tree Sisters and before Tree Sisters, and you're in a new stage of development now, and I'm heading into it too. But it's not to pathologize what went before either, because it was great work and there was loads of you online, loads of parts, and now there's other parts calling to be brought in online, and we're here for the whole journey. And I'm it doesn't have to be jazz hands or trailblazy for any of us, but I think it's important it was great work. And
Right.
in the quantum field, we can send healing back down the line and up the line. But I just want to stand up for your great work. Yeah, as well.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really important, because you really catalyzed me at those different times while you were possibly sitting on all of that stuff underneath, but it was still a fire and a gold coming through you. And yeah, and I'd say that to myself as well, maybe for
Good.
the three of us. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
A thought occurred to me just momentarily, and that is, when we're moving from the mother into the mage, regardless of whether or not we've had biological children, because we mother our projects, we mother, the world,
Mhm.
that when we've got that aspect on board, then we can mother ourselves. Yeah, but while we were busy mothering the world and mothering projects and clients or whatever, there wasn't the space, that's the zenith.
Mm.
And something's got to give as we start to wane, like the full moon going down to half moon. Yeah. It's like, so then we have to prioritize. Well, what are we going to prioritize? And, the perimenopausal symptoms that come up demand that we prioritize ourselves. But from the rational material or patriarchal viewpoint, we make the body wrong. Yeah, we're taught to scapegoat the body. Yeah, oh God, no. Rather than revere and bow to the body and go, oh, wow, you are initiating me, just like you initiated me from child to woman. It's always the body, yeah, i.e., the body is the earth. And so, it's this idea that the body is wrong, that, oh,
Or deficient.
yeah,
It's
yeah, that we can
deficiency I
fix it,
see.
like the Bionic Man from the 1970s TV series. So,
My sister is 15 years older than me, and I have asked her little bits about menopause, and it's kind of like she says it herself, it didn't really register. And either that means she had a really easy time of it, or she didn't have time to notice it or to be with it, and no that no shade there. But in my generation, what I'm seeing with all of my peers, particularly here in Ireland, and I don't know if I go into the cultural an analyst for a moment, is it because of the 100 years of controlling women's bodies in this country? And now, I mean, I would say 95% of the people I know are seeking a lot of medical support, including I've ventured into this myself. But what I don't like in that whole vicinity, and even in the doctor's surgeries, the images, the advertising, is the pathologization, or that there's a deficiency. And these words were falling off the cliff. And I know we are, but I wish there was as much mass given to the mythic model as the medical model. Yeah. Yeah.
right.
And
Yeah.
it's coming in conversations like this. It's coming through, the work that Alexandra and Shani are doing. It's like, and there's a lot more people out there that are doing it. Like, menopause wasn't even like bleeding has been shamed. Like, I mean, when I used to work as a therapist, I had Irish clients who were beaten every time they bled. And so they would just get pregnant again and again because the only time they didn't get beaten. I mean, it's like the savagery that's happened around our bodies, but also just like the lack of understanding about what menopause is. So the women, I think it's a combination. The women that went before us, you just got on with it
Yeah.
and there wasn't a deep understanding. I think there's also a big factor in how poisoned our bodies are, how depleted our bodies are, how electromagnetically frazzled our bodies are, that our parents and our grandparents weren't. Like, the speed of life now is burning us out. The stress response in our bodies is burning us out. So we're entering into menopause significantly weaker than our predecessors. And so we have less resistance. And then the same thing that is a lessening of our resistance is happening. It's compounded. So
Right.
I think we're finding it a lot harder. Also because the world is going so much faster and we're expected to keep up, and you can't.
Yeah.
Your brain stops working the same way, your body stops working the same way, your
Yeah.
eyesight, the ability to multitask, your memory, the whole lot is taken away. And I've heard it said that, you know, the brain itself, the neural pathways, like everything goes to mush in the same way that it does in pregnancy. Like, because there is a complete rewiring happen. We are supposed to lose our minds because our minds are not supposed to be the drivers of this incredible vehicles. Our souls
Right.
are. And so we're transitioning from being what we think we should according to the conditioning to the
Right.
possibility of what we really are according to the cosmos, according to
100%.
the nature of our bodies.
Thank you for
Wow.
speaking that.
Wow.
I'm writing a book called Demystifying Menopause, and it it speaks to that. And whew, the electromagnetic pollution, if we look
Huge.
at the fertility rates, when they plummeted in Europe was when mobile phones and PCs were brought in. Like this worshipping of tech as the savior, it's like it's actually killing us. We are sentient beings, and you know, menopause, I cannot fry myself anymore. Like, you know, we there's also this kind of everything that's false falls away. And so we're going through that anyway as we get closer to this pivotal shift. You know, it's like we're all being put through a duel between the ego and the soul. Who is going to be the dominant force, you know? And so menopause, it makes it intense in the present tense. Like that is happening and, you know, nothing you can do about it. But it's happening on a collective consciousness as well. So trying to keep up, you will go nuts because everything is speeding up. Like we're not meant to be living like machines. You know, if we think about Star Wars, Darth Vader, the Dark Father, he's more machine than man. Like, you know, our superheroes look more like machines than humans, and we're taught that that's heroic. Like, we are not machines. We are elemental. We are made of the same elements of the earth. And, you know, Gaia is calling us back to remember that. And, you know, if we think about the other beings that go through menopause, it's whales and elephants. These are the ones that carry the song lines of the ocean and the earth. They are matriarchal. They are the whales are the leaders of the pods, the elephants, the postmenopausal elephants, the leaders of the, you know, it's like in Paleolithic and Neolithic times, it was menopausal women that were deferred to for leadership. And so this is culturally you know, this is why we're being medicated. Ever since that book Feminine Forever came out, it's like just dull them down, pass them off as mad or irrelevant. But this is when we are you know, nature she crowns us. The word crone means crown. Yeah, I've been told I've got to wear this bloody turban now that I'm postmenopausal to acknowledge to myself my tapawa, my sacred power as a woman who has consciously journeyed the cycles. And it's, you know, it's acknowledging our own sacred power. This is why women in Paleolithic and Neolithic societies were honored as the embodiment of the living goddess, as crones. If we look at Venus of Willendorf, you know, or, you know, Venus of La Salle, these are crones. So this is why I'm loving that Gen X, the crossroads generation, is going banging the drum, going, hey, this is a thing. You got to listen. Like we are rising, but just not in a way that was anticipated, you know, not in that warrior way. Got on my soapbox then.
You're allowed, honey.
Thanks. But I got to say, you know, I love that you were both saying, oh, you know, it's time for the mythic to be heard. I recently got an agent and she shopped my book proposal for Demystify Menopause to the four main publishers, including Hay House in there, and they all said it was too woo-woo. You know, it's like that's
Wow, still.
all the books, they're evidence-based, you know, and they're by female doctors. We've got to hack our hormones. It's all about the bio and the body and the mind. It's not about the soul. And the mythic, you know, the word psyche means soul. The mythic helps us to navigate the inner realms, and that's the initiation of midlife and menopause. It's moving through the chaos, through the darkness, through the liminal, and there is nothing that prepares us for that, you know. we view it as the beginning of the end, or depression, or oh God, is it Alzheimer's? It's like, no.
Mm.
Got very
Would you
passionate.
say, Tanishka,
Yeah.
that you do have years of cyclical menstruality awareness under your belt? And I know you're saying, oh, it hasn't set you up for this threshold, but there's a consciousness in you having consciously traveled through your bleeding years. Would you say that's helping you to see this model differently?
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I I probably need to retract that statement because yes, it did prepare
I
me.
think so. Yeah. Yeah, the
It did
capacity to
prepare
see
me.
beyond the linear. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
Yeah, and
see
I
it
think I
in
think not I think not having that time, even though I wanted to, like I just
mm,
couldn't. I couldn't do it.
mm,
Is one of the reasons why
yeah.
this slamming into death has been so
Yeah.
complete, because I didn't give myself any of that. It just
Mm,
never happened.
mm.
Right.
I remember in 2016, 2015, 2016, going through a series of very difficult pieces and not being trauma, I'm much more trauma aware and informed and somatically informed now. I thought I was really losing it, like losing it into that I was falling off a cliff. And I remember somebody, a really good sister at the time, encouraging me to see could I close my laptop even for a weekend, like a couple of days. And I got drop kicked into deep early trauma. Eventually, that's what came up, of course. Everything else was on top of it. And I feel it has prepared me in some respects. Maybe we'll meet again in a year or next week. But I know at that time, the only way to stay alive was to be able to sit. I'd put on a timer and bear the stuff that came up was so explosive and it wasn't just mine. I would set a timer for like 90 seconds and kind of nearly white knuckle it, but I knew how to bring compassion in. And I feel that that was a training in a way to be able to bear and build a little bit more resilience. And then I found teachers and went into deep trauma work. So those pockets, I'm just looking at the pockets that can help prepare us for this.
Mm.
Body awareness, menstrual awareness, awareness of what's gone before us in our ancestry, epigenetically. And I also say I still love sitting in circle. That might be one of the last things to go with my women folk because I don't have to be flash with them. I don't have to be jazz hands. They don't give a shit. They're like, come on. So I feel free there at the moment. But one thing that I've really noticed is sometimes leaning into the mythic ancestors. I don't know if it's because of what Ireland's going through in the last couple of years, because I hate using the word Renaissance because it's French. No shade on the French, but I want an Irish word for it.
Right.
But when you lean into the Cailleach,
Mm.
like she is the matron of menopause. She doesn't give a shit. She will drop kick you into what you need. She's our Kali, I guess.
Mm.
Um, and with the Morrigan, and there's fierce sovereignty goddesses in there. And so that's another resource, a bit like what you're talking about, Tanishka, on the mythic planes that we can
Mm.
lean into. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the dark feminine,
Yeah.
whether you know her as Hecate or Caredwin or Kaliach, you know.
Mm,
But she was the one who was most feared by the empires and persecuted. And of course, you know, it's not just the fear of becoming more invisible or devalued as we age, it's the fear of being persecuted because, of course, this is all opening. That's what I wanted to say. Claire, when you were talking about, you are going to lose your mind, like the rational, you just don't have the same access to it anymore. But what we get is we get more downloads, we get this opening up, we get more visions, you know? And if that isn't understood, if that isn't nurtured, if we don't sit in circle regularly to practice the opening up of our subtle senses and practice our mystic gifts, the clairs, clairvoyance, clairsentience, go on, then of course women think they're going mad, and they only focus on what they're losing, the rational processing, the fast, but not appreciating I'm actually gaining. Because with every shift, we don't just lose, we gain, and it's always equal. But if we can't identify what we're gaining, how can we fully, wholeheartedly embrace this new chapter, I mean, I don't, let's take a moment to just move into our hearts, move into gratitude again for what we've gained so far in this transition that we didn't have before. And then I'd like us to do a little collective prayer for all the women that are on this threshold. And I'll throw it open then if there's anything you want to particularly promote, because we're coming up to the end of our time together. But yeah, if you just feel into your heart, how has your life, and I know we're still in it, we're still in the quagmire. I said the other day, I've been swimming in the chaos soup for the last 3 years and my arms are tired, but we're still in it. But what have you gained so far from that? Just take a moment to tune into what's authentic. So who's feeling to speak to that?
Can speak to that.
Please.
The dropping of trauma means there is a gateway into intimacy with life that I didn't even know what that was because I wasn't in my body enough to feel it or to experience it. And out of that comes a depth of love that is just growing on a daily basis, a depth of capacity for compassion, a depth of discernment.
Mm.
I'm starting to experience the edges of joy. That's not the currency. My life has been a currency of pain and strife. And I didn't really know that I didn't know joy, and that's coming. But the fulcrum word inside of Tree Sisters and inside of the Tree Sisters map was intimacy. And intimacy was the gateway through the physical of the body. And that the quality of slowing down required for the subtle listening that allows you to start to tune into the filaments of creation, that allows you to start to genuinely communicate with the trees or the butterflies or the sky or the earth. You have to soften. There's a softening required, and you can't soften if your system is rigged with trauma. It's like you have to like melt through it, and that melting, even the melting into the pain, is intimate. It's intimate. It's so intimate, and it's yours. Okay, it's horrendous, but it's yours. It's this reclamation. It's this turning in. It's this wrapping of ourselves back up in our own arms and our own love. And it's just that then gives, I mean, that to me is why the women become the leaders or have been the leaders, because our propensity to alchemize pain and move into coherence through unity allows us to be with a traumatized world and not just react. If we can alchemize sufficiently to soften into presence, then we can respond to a world rather than react. Then it's not just, you hit me, I hit you, you hit me, I hit you. It's like there's just like, oh wow, there's hitting. Let's be present. Like what's underneath that? Like there's a different possibility that becomes available to you through the melting and the alchemization of the trauma response. So that there is this possibility for love to meet everything rather than reactivity. And that's profound. That is absolutely profound. It is a game changer. That's the new world. Like, that's the new world as it inhabits me on a day-to-day basis, as I'm learning how to melt and meet life with intimacy, learning how to be in the body. And it's like, I can go into the story of tree sisters is needed now more than ever. I completely failed. And I can go into the story of this bit of life right here is coming into coherence. And therefore the vibration of coherence has become possible through this particular matrix of trauma, which is not just mine, it's epidemic. Over here, that pathway is being opened through this vehicle. That means that vibrational invitation, that pathway has been laid for the planet. You know,
May I reflect something I'm seeing right now in you? You've
yes.
got a tree coming out of your head, right? You are embodying Tree Sister in a way that you couldn't have leading that organization. So
Yeah.
now you are the tree, you are the Shekinah, you are one with the Anima Mundi, the axis of the world, the tree of the three worlds, because you're daring to journey deep within, as well as noticing the mundane, the ordinary lessons that Gaia shows us in the everyday world, and look at life from the branches, from the mythic. So you are now your living legacy.
I had to leave it to become it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the great irony of the whole thing, you know. It's
Right.
like let it go to actually fall into integrity with it, with the original
Right.
teachings.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I'm so grateful that I get to do that now.
Right.
Like, so grateful.
Beautiful. Thank you. Claire,
Kathy,
Kathy.
it's the greatest form of intimacy, Claire, because you've become her, you know, you've become her. I'm so moved by you every time, genuinely, so moved. And so you inspire me to go a bit deeper and yeah, I want to acknowledge the glimmers, the post-traumatic growth. I know for sure that I can show up for myself now in a way that was never possible or modeled. I speak up. I don't know who's saying these words, that things that come out of my mouth that were always suppressed. And I'm trying to be skillful with that, but it's wild. And I really, one of my root teachers speaks of this sense of responsibility, the ability to respond differently and to hold for that extra beat. So yeah, showing up differently, speaking differently. And I know I've got my back. And I say that not just about my little this little life personal growth, but for all the women at my back who weren't able to have their backs, or those coming down the track. And so also you spoke of wings earlier, like I think of the teachings of Tara Brach, you know, that second arrow that used to come in all the time on myself, the blame, I think I give myself a lot more compassion. I've learned to sit in the shame and the fuck ups and the failures and the, you know, it's not perfect. It won't ever be perfect, but there's more compassion. Yeah, and capacity in a different way. I used to associate capacity with how many plates can I spin and be jazz hands at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a different capacity to soften and really show up to things that I've masked before. Yeah. So it's I'm really glad you said this, Tanishka. It's so important to move from the deficiency to the possibility and to articulate the possibility that's here right at this edge. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
all to play for, and I mean that not in a cheerleadery way, but
Mm.
what else might be here?
Mm.
Mm. These
There's
conversations are
just
so important. Yeah.
there's one thought that just dropped in, and I just want to leave it as my completion, which is that menopausal women, if we embody it, we're the brakes on the system.
Beautiful.
We're the brakes on the whole wild, over accelerating insanity. Like
Beautiful.
if we can drop, it's like that
Mm. Stop the
pulling down,
madness.
stop the madness. But it's like I'd never thought about it in that way. But if en masse menopausal women were actually able to see
Love it.
through the insanity for what it is and
Mhm.
drop beneath it and like pull on the way down, it is like a braking system in a way.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Kathy, thank you for what you shared about I've got my own back in a way that the women in my lineage who are at my back couldn't have had their own back. Um, I've noticed in myself a yearning to connect with the ancestors in midlife that previously I wasn't available to. And because of that, feeling them with me, you know? And so, yeah, acknowledging their presence more consciously and just that being available, being more available, that really resonates that when we're more available to ourselves, then we are available to life, as Claire said, and available to quality interactions. I mean, had over 500,000 followers, and it's like I didn't know those people. And now that, it's like last thing I want to do is be on social media. It just seems so
Can't do
teenage.
it anymore.
No, there's a total like, it's like who wants to be self-promoting on some artificial algorithm?
I know.
Oh. So um, I'm reminded of a vision that I had. I was in a Blue Lotus ceremony earlier this year in Glastonbury, and I was shown myself as a big white rose. And the message was the reason that the bride, wears white is not because she's chaste, obviously, but it's because she's returned to a state of innocence over the autumn and the winter that's broken her down. And that what we've discussed here has been very much a return to innocence. And with the deer jumping behind Claire, that totemic ally of innocence, that's what we're heading towards. It's a homecoming. It's coming back to ourselves, back to a state of grace, back to trusting the process of life, being the magical child who's full of awe and wonder for the chaos unfolding benevolently, knowing that it's for us, not against us. So it seems that these are the steps that we're taking rather than fighting the process, but yeah, coming back to that full circle, that recapitulation, if we're willing to do it. So thank you. What a beautiful conversation we've had. Rich, textured, honest, raw. And I know it's been inspiring for me, so I'm sure it's been inspiring for others. I'd like to just do a quick closing, I suppose, of the circle and the invitations that we set with invocation. But while we've still got that space between the worlds, taking it in turns like a Quaker meeting, just to speak our prayers for the collective sisterhood who are coming to this threshold, moving through it and beyond. So just coming into the one heart. So we would like to invoke the wise woman aspect in all her faces, all her names, to be at that crossroads as she is, but to be consciously met, so that every woman who comes to that threshold is embraced by her like a fairy godmother who guides us unseen, who calls us within, like wrapping around us a shawl and giving us a pair of slippers and making us a cup of tea, and invites us to go within, invites us to listen, invites us to doze, to spend that time in the liminal space like the she bear Ursa Major, the great mother, hibernating, distilling all of those painful lessons that we journeyed as the child, as the maiden, as the mother, knowing that this is our time to start to be kinder to ourselves, to take more time for ourselves, to rest, and to find the inner productivity in those restful times. This is my prayer for the collective sisterhood. Who wishes to speak their words of power, their wishes of intent?
Kathy?
Yeah, my intention for anybody tuning into this is that through our kind of collective quantum intelligence that we can find new pathways, step out of the algorithms, the old algorithms, and find new pathways into the deepest sovereignty at this time. And that we can find kindness for ourselves and each other, and the kind of capacity that allows us to soften and open and really surrender into these thresholds. And for anyone who's really struggling at these thresholds, that you may find the support, the exact support that you need, both internally and in the form of allies or mythic allies, to walk this path with you at this time.
So it is. Claire.
Life, no matter how it seems to show up, is trying to call us home. We can clench away from the pain. We can tighten. We can speed up. We can try to live inside the construct that we've been force-fed and conditioned with. Or we can divest our energy, divest our attention, divest our life force, pull it out of the insanity and plug into something below. Below that, below it all, deep down, dropping, allowing for a drop, trusting that there is this vast sea of feminine intelligence, this cosmic ocean of deep knowing where the mysteries reside, where the homecoming resides, that beneath it all, if you fall, you will always be caught. You will always be cradled. There is a deeper homecoming, a deeper love, a deeper truth, a deeper nourishment, and a deeper intimacy with life that is waiting for all of us if we can soften enough and fall into the arms of that. And it will only ever bring us closer to the truth of who we are. That is our destiny. That is what everything is set up to try to help us do, to let go of who we're not and fall into the arms of who we are. And just remember, every time a snake sheds its skin, it sheds the surface of its eyes and it goes blind. Those thresholds, we're not supposed to know where we're going. Blindness is a necessary part so that we can die fully to the old self and fall and allow the universe to land us exactly where we need to be without our trying to control anything. So allow the blindness. There's nothing wrong. In fact, the more you can surrender into the unknown, the greater chance that the universe has of putting you exactly where you're supposed to be.
truth.
Mm.
Thank you. We thank the clan mothers. We thank our oversouls. We thank the women of our lineages. We thank our listeners for being here, and we thank you, our beautiful guests. Thank you so much for bearing your hearts and souls just so transparently. It's been an honor to sit with you both. I will share a link to your websites, so if people want to follow up with you, they can, any way, shape, or how, and join your lists for future endeavors. Yeah, but thank you. Thanks for really embodying true leadership in a feminine way, which is to expose vulnerability and truth. Bless you both.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you both. Grow more. Big love. Big love. Thank you. Mm.
Okay. Ciao for
Bye.
now. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Sisters of the Moon. To receive a notification when it's time to meet again, click the button to subscribe, and we'll see you here next time we gather in the Moon Lodge. Until then, blessed be your thoughts, words, and deeds under the guiding light of Grandmother Moon.